Hey guys, Dave from Nerdarchy here. For Nerds by Nerds, hanging out with the Nerdarchy crew today.
I'm Ted.
I'm Ryan.
And we're going to be talking about Eberron, if you can't tell.
Huzzah.
So, we may or may not like this setting.
Just a little bit.
A little bit.
6 hardbound books and 1 edition, you know.
Well, these are the ones I grabbed readily.
Great. So there's probably some more hiding in the
There
shelf.
may be 1 or 2 more hidden. I'm not sure. Or this could be all of them, depending on how organized I was when I put them up. We haven't played 3.5 in a long time.
But getting back to Matt Click's Fistful of Dice is GM tip number 1. Steal from everywhere. Like, all this stuff, still valid in 5th edition. You could totally rip off all the villages, towns, organizations.
Yeah, there's a ton of fluff. And pretty much you could probably take...
Fluff or flump?
There is no flumps in these books.
In this, no.
But since Eberron kind of incorporated everything, there's probably a flump in there somewhere.
A floating flump?
Yeah. They're in the Kalashtar part of the Eberron that nobody cares about.
Right, yeah.
Clearly from the PDF we received from Unearthed Arcana.
Right, yeah.
Yeah.
So, but no, I would even go as far as say, like, the Eberron flavored feat trees, you could probably combine them into one, like, Uber feat and make it a 5th edition feat.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we've seen from the preview in the Unearthed Arcana that they really did that with, like, now your Dragonmark feat it's just level dependent. You're going to get all these cool stuff as you level. You know?
Yeah, if you're a PC
yeah.
and you take a Dragonmark, you have the Uber Dragonmark.
Yeah.
As you get higher in levels.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, but let's digress a little bit and
isn't our whole thing a digression, really?
Usually.
Yeah. But let's do this. Yeah.
Digression, denigration, one or the other. I don't know. But I guess there's probably a lot of people that don't even know what Eberron is, depending where they got into the game.
Right.
Or if they came from 2nd edition to 5th edition, there's a lot of people that did that. So Eberron is unique in several ways. One is Watts held a contest and actually...
okay, I was going to make sure you got into that, yeah.
Yeah, and actually, took submissions, although it's a little bit rigged, in my opinion, but a lot of people were really angry about this.
Yeah.
Because they let professional and semi-professional designers contribute
Basically,
as well.
people that were already writing for WotC at the time were also submitting settings. I
But
mean,
I don't think Keith Baker was writing for Watts at the time.
He just was an author.
Yeah. I mean, he'd done some stuff, so whatever. Some people had.
If you're gonna complain that the richness of Eberron made it and yours didn't, I'm sorry. What we got was a fabulous campaign setting. It's unique to what's out there.
But we could have gotten something super lame from a nobody.
that's true. We could have gotten that.
Could have gotten North Canyon?
Yeah.
Yeah, the campaign setting that we made years and years ago. And we definitally submitted to that contest. We were a little butthurt that we didn't win.
Yeah, I can't believe it.
I mean, it was
we
clearly...
submitted 3 of them, didn't we?
I submitted 1 by myself.
You submitted yours. You submitted...
I submitted Shattered Realm.
Shattered Realm, and then we all submitted Althgania.
Yeah.
Which Shattered Realm was pretty damn cool too. So it had its own thing. But that was like a departure from like traditional D&D campaign settings to like Dark Sun. Like that level of change. But
I often wonder if some of the elements of Shattered Realm did not make it into Eberron.
Yeah, there was definitely some feelings about that. Like when we started playing through Shattered Realm.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah. Although I will say, Eberron, the thing about Eberron that's way better than Shattered Realm was actually probably too divided to make a good campaign setting. So it would be hard. Yeah, like it was factioned off.
But
two major factions.
2 big factions, yeah. So we might have to fix that if we ever revisit that setting to like make it a little less. Because you can't just have a Pepsi or a Coke like in a campaign setting.
Yeah, and that was probably one of the major
shades of
flaws.
Gray. Not 50 Shades of Grey, but more shades of gray in your campaign world, for sure. Valentine's Day had just passed. So back to Eberron because we really did digress a whole lot.
If he goes back to 50 Shades of Grey, I say we both just give him up.
So
Eberron,
Eberron, what do we say is the good and what do we say is the bad? I mean, that's one of the things we talk about with the
okay,
settings.
so the I guess the elevator pitch for Eberron was, what is it? Indiana Jones meets the
Maltese
Falcon, and was there something else in there?
So meets I mean, there might have been like a Tolkienish reference because it does, like it does hit the fantasy cylinders on top of that. But
so you've got a high magic setting,
super high magic. Yeah,
this would definitely qualify as Arcana Punk. I don't even know if that term was being used at the time.
Right. Yeah. So you've got the steampunk feel to it because you've got flying airships and that kind of stuff, which I think is fantastic.
It is fantastic. Like, it's unbelievable.
And you have a train. They have the lightning round.
Yeah,
they basically have an elemental train.
Yeah.
Yeah. So all of that stuff is rather unique. It's rather cool.
Well, in addition to that, too, right from the beginning, the campaign kicks off with there's just the Treaty of Thronehold has just been signed. 5 nations have been at war for 100 years. So there's tons of plot elements right there. So you have this like Cold World war feeling, and in addition to that, you also have all these people that are coming back from war. Yeah. So displaced.
I mean, it was really influenced by, and as was the film noir genre, like post World War II. Like they were basically, everybody was kind of disheartened by the level of casualties each side has taken and the atrocities being committed, which. That definitely was influencing this campaign setting. And if you want to run a kick-ass Eberron campaign, basically rip off like all the great pulp novels, written back in like the 1940s and 50s, and all the like black and white films or whatever. You could totally whole cloth take those plot lines and then reskin it with Eberron and run a fantastic
so many
Eberron
stuff works with it. I just ran a Google Hangout game, where basically I did like a murder mystery,
theater.
Not theater, but kind of like
murder mystery dinner.
Yeah, I was kidding. But,
so like and the other thing is when you read like a novel, and there's a lot of great novels, when you get to the end of the book, generally you don't know if the good guys won or not.
Yeah, there's some really good ones, and then there's some that like I was just through the book because I was like, this is stupid.
Well, with Eberron, there's always that twist at the end. And I'm not gonna give away what actually happened in your game, so that those that are watching can go out and watch the campaign vid. But you get to the end, and it's like, well, holy crap! What about X, Y, and Z?
Yeah.
And it takes a lot more prep for a Eberron game than it would for, I think, a regular game, because you have to have that uncertainty. You have to have those questioning factors to make it really fit Eberron.
Yeah, like 30 minutes post. Definitely.
Right. No, I mean, like, so it should, like, sometimes...
leave more questions than answers.
Right, exactly. Right. Or, like, the victory just feels hollow for some reason. Like, it's kind of like, we did this thing at what cost? Like, another great thing to possibly be influenced by is, like, Twilight Zone. Like, how, like... a thing would happen that theoretically should be good for the protagonist of the story, but like it's stolen away from them somehow. Like the guy that like all he wants to do is be alone in the world and read, and he finds he's the only man like on the planet, and he's like surrounded by these libraries and stuff, and his glasses break. But so you have to figure out how to make your Eberron plot kind of like have that sort of texture.
So like that's the feel of Eberron, but then the mechanic side of Eberron is they introduced a lot of different things. They introduced 4 new races.
Yep. We got the Changeling, the Shifter,
the Warforged.
Right, and what was and then we had the Kalashtar. Yeah, the Kalashtar, which are like these psionic fused entities that
they kind of like have a symbiote kind of thing going on with the psychic being.
Right. Yeah. So they're like a host body.
And then they added a new class,
the artificer.
Yep.
They added a new kind of like feat tree aspect of the game.
The Dragonmarks.
The Dragonmarks, which then, also forms a really cool aspect of the world as well, the Dragonmark houses.
Mm-hmm.
Which are basically war profiteers, by and large. Like, that was kind of their role in the campaign world. Like,
Yeah, for the longest time, and now that the war is over, now they're like... But now they control all the commerce.
Yeah, now they're like... how do we turn this into a peacetime economy? Yeah, so they were like the major manufacturers going in the war.
But then they were also like Switzerland as well.
Yeah, well, Switzerland that managed to profiteer all during the war, which...
they were neutral for all intents and purposes.
Yeah.
They sold to everybody.
Right, yeah. Well, I mean, like, it would be like a bankerland who's still, they're willing to take, like, Nazi Germany money and U.S. allied powers money, too. Like, yeah, we'll hold this for you, and for you, and for you. Yeah, so... Yeah, it's good stuff.
So there was that. The very beginning of the campaign, also, with the Treaty of Thronehold. Actually, this is what ends the war, which is also, again, it's kind of a ripoff of World War II.
Yeah,
and that was...
You can rip off history, though, because it's not copyrighted, so it's great.
Well, that's true. The Day of Mourning, and that's when the nation of Seer just ceased to exist.
Right, some calamity happens,
and they don't really know.
Off the map.
And now it's this weird haunted land that no one really wants to go to.
Right, yeah.
So they don't know if one of the 5 nations, or one of the other 4 nations basically dropped the bomb, or if they were creating some uber weapon
that happened to malfunction because it was the headquarters of Cannith, and things can go awry with Cannith.
Right, or it could have been Seer themselves that did it.
Right.
There's a lot of espionage tropes interlaced throughout the Eberron stuff.
Did they ever tell you exactly what happened in Seer? Off camera, you're gonna have to tell me if you know.
I've never found it.
Or it's always
a lot of this stuff is left kind of open ended. They had the Goblin nations. That took advantage.
Dargoon, right? Was that?
Yeah, Dargoon, which took advantage of. The last war to go. You know what? We're gonna take this part.
Well, so it started out, if I remember correctly. So, there was lots of sort of freebooting mercenaries going around fighting on different sides.
Right. So
there was a faction of Goblinoid mercenaries headed by hobgoblins.
Yeah.
That was, sell swords to the highest bidder. Except for they're like, everybody else is kind of weak, and we're a pretty kick-ass fighting force. So they basically carved out some land and territory for themselves while everybody else was fighting. They're like, we're going to take this over now. So that was pretty badass.
Then, there's a whole nother nation of monsters.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I think they're ruled by, Medusas or whatever, 3 Medusa sisters or something.
I haven't even read that part.
And I may actually be screwing it up, so someone that knows that more than me.
I forget what the deity, because, they worship a deity of, monsters and madness and monsters and mazes. No, so, there's, a sort of a deity that's revered in that region, too, that's, a monstery deity. So,
well, there's the Dark Sixes. They also got a lot of...
they get some love.
Yeah. And that's the other thing where... In Dark Sun 2, the religions are a bit different too. Eberron.
Yeah.
The other world.
Right.
But the Eberron religions are different than a lot of the other campaign settings as well, where you can just be a cleric of the Sovereign Host or the Dark Six. Basically the whole pantheon. Which in history that's
how
it was common, but not so much in a lot of the gaming worlds. Generally, you pick a deity, and that's who you revere.
Well, Third did open it up for you to be able to revere,
ideals.
Ideals, which is kind of like that. The Sovereign Six is, good, and they skew towards law, ultimately.
But generally, when you worship an ideal, it's, a specific ideal. When you worship a whole pantheon, that's a conglomerate.
Encompasses a lot.
Yeah.
And you're like, my domain selection just went up exponentially.
But then they take that ideal thing too, and they do that as well with this Church of the Silver Flame, where there's not actually a deity.
Well, no, the flame speaks to some people, and they almost do a
but it's not a god.
They do a pope or it was a papal thing or a Dalai Lama thing where this entity. There's always a person that can kind of speak to the flame, and at the time of the campaign setting when it started, it was a little girl that was able to speak to the flame and interpret its will, kind of thing.
Yeah, but it's kind of weird because there's a demon trapped in there, so sometimes it might be actually the demon.
Yeah, but they don't really know.
They don't know that.
Only a few people really know. So that's
so they set that up, and then there was an Inquisition period where the Church of the Silver Flame was basically witch hunting, but for lycanthropes, and virtually hunted them into extinction. And then the Shifters are descendant of lycanthropes, so they bore some of the brunt of that.
Yeah.
There's that's going on. You have the Warforged, which are living constructs. First time they were offered as a PC race.
Well, first time they existed too. So that's the first time. But it was pretty. Well,
the whole playing a construct in D&D for the most part.
Yeah. Well, without having ridiculous level adjustments to be able to do so. But the sweet things about the Warforged is, if you're a martial character, never having to sleep, i.e., never taking off your armor.
Yeah,
I love the Warforged, and I actually had in a campaign in 3rd edition, had a Warforged, and he was doing all kinds of stuff to bring up and raise up the Warforged. He was creating a
just like the Lord of the Blades, right?
No.
Because he's trying to raise up the Warforged too.
Yeah, he was doing it in a different way. I was a good guy. But, you know, the Warforged, he was trying to make, like, a place for Warforged to go when they weren't working, when everybody else was kind of be sleeping. Because since they don't need to sleep...
The Warforged pub, is that what it is? The Tavern of Warforged?
Well, essentially. But, I mean, it was like, all right, you know, it's a place to hang out, get resources, meet other people, get repairs done.
That would be a horrible pub. You would make no money whatsoever.
Yeah, right.
You'd have to institute a cover charge just to make any money.
Yeah. Well, you could, like, since they are still able to, like, eat and drink, so you're, like, selling experiences to them. So, like, you know, you could sell everything at a premium because this is the first time you'll ever get to taste this exotic thing.
It wasn't about making money. It was about, you know, trying to, you know, give them something since, you know, so many of them, well, since Warforged initially were just designed as soldiers, it's like, hey, here, go off and do the war and fight because we say so. It's what you're made for.
Well, it's the reason they exist. It existed, literally.
Now that they don't have a purpose, it's like, well, where do they fall? What do they do? Yeah, so
the best checkers player ever.
Yeah, that's right.
Ever. Except for their fat fingers are too fat and they can't pick up the pieces. They're Warforged problems.
But I felt, you know, being drawn to that, you know, concept of a construct, you know, I felt that they were a really, really awesome race.
Well, I mean, it gives you another, like, you know, role-playing challenge.
Right.
It's like playing a Thri-Kreen. Like, how can I play something that's so new to a lot of things, or like such an alien mindset? You know, is kind of how I see Warforged.
Yeah, I feel like they're a little bit easier to play than some of the other monster races, though, because you have to experiment with the innocence and newness more so than the alienness.
Right.
Because
it's like playing a small child that happens to be in their body and like
and made for killing,
fully capable of. You're right. Fully capable of like rational thought and everything, but like experientially like a child, you know, essentially, because they were only like a number of years old, like barely in the double digits, most of them. So that's kind of part of the interesting challenges of playing them.
Then we also have the Changeling, which are the descendants of the doppelgangers, which basically are, you know, in Eberron, the ultimate spy character.
Absolutely, yeah. You can do no better than the Changeling.
I like the Changelings just because, like, the way they're portrayed in the novels is, like, they'll take on a personality and just be like, I'm going to run this for the next few years. It's like they're role players.
Right,
yeah. You know? Well, yeah, they kind of, like, there was actually a couple of different philosophies.
Oh yeah, the becomer,
where you know, depending on the particular changeling, like they may actually become that person, or you know, there was one that like basically would rarely ever shape changing
because they wanted to be like their true self type of thing. Like they wanted to just maintain the visage of being, you know, they as a changeling. Yeah. Yeah,
so they introduced some really interesting things like that. You know, and then you take a changeling and combine it with either the bard or the artificer, and then you can pretty much almost duplicate or mimic anything.
Right, yeah, literally.
Pretty effective, especially in 3.5 when you had use magic device.
Oh, dude, and there was a prestige class too for the changeling, where, so they basically the prestige class push them to be more and more like doppelgangers, essentially. Like they really tapped into that sort of morphing. Like I think you had a thing to like you know, like negate crits basically because like change your physiology to like move your organs around and stuff like that. Like it was some pretty cool stuff.
You're not talking about the War Shaper, are you?
Was it the War Shaper?
There was actually quite a few of them.
Really
but
cool.
But then you know, the other thing that would happen too is there was a lot of things that were made for basically the druid and wild shaping. Yeah. But because of the wording, you could do the same thing with a changeling. Yeah. Except for they could get it fairly quick.
Oh yeah, as far as getting
because they didn't have because they started off as shape changers.
Right.
So you know, so they were really interesting. There was a lot going on with those characters, and they're also really complex because they always had this like crisis of identity.
Yeah, always with the identity crisis for sure.
Then that brings us to the last race that was introduced is the Kalashtar, which are basically like, so they're tied to this thing called the Dreaming Dark, which is like, it's almost like the dream realm. Also, an organization where these like dream demons are trying to invade Eberron. and they come out up through the ages because Eberron definitely did like an Age of Dragons and Age of Giants type thing, and they're trying to conquest over Eberron, but they can't really get through, so they have to use agents.
Asians?
No, not Asians. Agents.
Okay, all right.
And the Kalashtar are like the opposing force to this, and they're highly psionic, and they just all look like really good looking humans, but they got a symbiote.
Right.
They each get their own personal venom.
They're all like Dax from Deep Space Nine.
Yes.
Yeah. Actually, I was just thinking, just a quick little side note to Changelings, a cool madness to have in an Eberron game, where like a madness they get where like they basically have a crisis of identity, like a madness of like, I don't know who I am, so they keep changing personas and they don't have control over it.
And everything changes.
Yeah. They just keep changing form, but also like mindset too.
The personality as well.
Yeah. Anyway, so that's a little diatribe, but yeah.
And so that brings us to the Eberron class, the artificer.
Yep.
Which Unearthed Arcana did as a wizard tradition, and I think it's a really great wizard tradition, but it fails.
It's not artificer.
It fails to live up to what what an artificer is supposed to be able to do. If you look at the makeup of the 5th edition class, you say, okay, well, I'm playing a blah. Well, you take first level, well, you're clearly that. Whatever they give you at first level is enough to lock in that idea. Well, if you decide, you know what, I'm going to play an artificer. Well, if you're playing a first level artificer, you're just playing a wizard. There's nothing to separate.
You get it by level 2.
Right, but if you're playing a first level game, as a lot of games start off, there's nothing at first level that makes you say, well, I'm an artificer.
I feel
just take the criminal background, you get thieves' tools, there you go. Or the guild artisan, say you get thieves' tools because you tinker with crap all the time. So
well, and that's what I feel like you should be able to do it through your background and your class at first level. But and you can get like 2/3 of it in 5th edition.
You're almost there,
but you can't get it all.
Yeah, well, I mean,
unless you play a dwarf.
So yeah, maybe wizard isn't sort of the ideal fit for the artificer build, because again, they don't really kick in and be the thing that they are until the next level. I could see if they did something with like building off of bard, because bard actually makes a lot of sense with their just like diverse spell selection, and then you kind of, I don't know, maybe just tinker with the way that they sort of cast their spells.
Like the elements from the artificer from 3.5 that made it feel like an artificer was, you had some weapon proficiency, you had some armor proficiency, you had spell casting, and you had trap finding. They're actually like a bard that didn't suck.
Well, I mean, for the edition, yeah. There was a bard that, like, instead of, doing group affecting magic, you just make temporary magic items instead. So, yeah, instead of pumping up the whole party, you, make a cool, like a wand that can do this or that, cast a spell out of it, so...
Yeah, their spell casting was called Infusions, and part of what they always had to do was put it into an object,
right,
in order to make it useful. So so with Eberron, you had new races, a brand new class. The class made sense because Eberron was highly magical, and basically they almost introduced magic in almost to the level of technology.
Right.
It wasn't almost. It absolutely was. I mean,
a
technology is a thing that's a part of your everyday, and Eberron magic was part of people's everyday lives.
And they kind of did it in a cool way with the House Cannith. They would use something called a schema, and what that was is like a magical, almost like the magical blueprints, right?
Right.
And it allowed them to make magic items faster and less costly.
Right. Schema is like schematic. Like it's totally Yeah. So it plays right into that. So yeah, I mean.
So they kind of made it. They tried to put a logic to it and make it make more sense.
Right.
In a sense.
So, if anything, what would you say would be a downside to Eberron?
Well, if you don't like high magic, you don't like steampunk, if you don't like a fantasy noir game, then you're not gonna like.
So an investigative game too, like it's not going to be your thing if you're not into investigative games. If you want a game that feels like Conan, like Sword and Sandals, or Sword and Sorcery, not your game at all.
Oh,
it's
absolutely.
totally
Yeah, I would agree
not.
with
Yeah. So those what I would say would be the drawbacks, and if those are the games you want to play more, then Eberron is not the setting.
Yeah, because one of the design elements that they put into Eberron was we want to be able to have everything in Eberron. Kind of like Forgotten Realms, only done well. Yeah, like because Forgotten Realms is so blah and generic, and nothing feels unique at all.
See, I don't have a problem with Forgotten Realms. It just doesn't stand out.
The best parts of Forgotten Realms are because an author took it and made it their own and wrote about it. Where in Eberron, everything is done. It just feels seamless. Like everything feels like it belongs. Nothing felt shoehorned to me.
Well, I mean, that's because it's, like, Forgotten Realms is almost like a campaign setting created by committee, because of all the different authors having their hands in it. And also, too, actually, I believe wasn't that what's campaign world, beginning and then it just kind of branched off. But anyway, so that was a campaign world created by committee, whereas, like, there was one design team, for the most part, when Eberron came out, all working on it, all like meeting, probably like daily, weekly, whatever, to make sure that it had a unified vision. So you have like a clarity of vision in this, and everything.
So what you're saying is, it feels like it was done better because it was.
It was more
planned,
intentional.
Yeah,
it was super more intentional comparatively. And I think that's a big part of it. A campaign setting, like that's when we're writing our own campaign setting, like we have to be intentional about it.
Well, yeah, I mean it makes sense. So with Eberron, like I said, to me there is no bad stuff because I like playing in all that different stuff, and I think we've gone over all the good stuff.
Well, the only thing we haven't really talked about is the Dragonmarks.
Well, we have like with the Dragonmark houses, and we haven't specifically what they are. I mean, really, it's a tattoo.
It's a magic tattoo that symbolizes something greater. In those people. So like if you've got a Dragonmark, the house that it's associated with is going to hold you in a higher standing. It's going to, you're somebody cooler because you've got this.
Well, and also too, like it also denotes like a noble bloodline. Like you're a part of that house's bloodline. So, if a commoner happens to manifest, like a patron, say one of the noble houses like patronized a brothel, and all of a sudden one of the ladies of the night that work there has a child that has a mark. Well, that clearly means that this guy was philandering over here, and now like that sets up a really awkward situation.
No, it doesn't. Not always, because of the way the Dragonmarks, they can show up anytime, anywhere, pretty much.
But I thought it was given to the bloodline of that house too, as a part of it. That's a part of the whole like mythology of it. It's like you have to be a part of the noble bloodline to manifest it.
No.
I'm pretty sure you're wrong. We're gonna have to
put it in the comments below.
We're gonna have to research,
or
we're gonna research it and prove it wrong.
Your race donates whether you could be a Dragonmark or not. But no, it's not. It's absolutely not always that. And if you are a commoner and you do manifest a mark, you're gonna go to the house. It may be in a sack,
right?
But you're going there at some point. They're going to do everything they can to pull you back into the enclave and raise you up.
Because they anyone who's got a mark means that you've got a chance of having a kid who's going to have a mark. So therefore they want to be like, all right, well let's bring you up. Let's make sure that you're well protected so that you have the chance of there being more marks.
So, at a certain point, the marks just started showing up, and I think it was Konark. The dwarves. I think they were like the first ones to kind of, show up with, and then they started a house, and then like other ones would start to manifest and appear. And so what they would kind of do is like the first houses kind of went to the other ones or went to these other new marks and said, you got to kind of do this thing. Here it is. Kandarak is the house. And they're dwarves and they're like the bankers. But, I think they were the first ones to manifest and actually form into an organization. And when others would show up, either they did or one of the other new houses that started doing it would convince them that they need to start a house. And one of the reasons was they didn't want the Dragonmarks to mix. Because if the Dragonmarks mix, they believed, like there was a theory that you could get what was called an aberrant Dragonmark, which was like, you know, like the other ones, only, you know,
some far realmy sort of stuff happened, which was, you know, like
darker aspects.
Yeah, like the crazy, like, Cthulian sort of stuff. You were able to manifest, like, powers that were kind of creepy and this.
Well,
and that.
it wasn't always creepy though. It could just be darker aspects like plague and decay.
That's not creepy. No, that's not creepy at all.
No, not really.
Yeah,
I mean, some of that stuff happens in nature, so. But
nature's creepy.
Well, nature can be creepy, you know. So that's why they try and, you know, separate the houses as much as possible so that they don't get more of these aberrant marks.
Right.
And then, like, there are storylines that kind of they sprung up around them as well. Like there was, like, you know, a rebellion of aberrant marks, which then the houses, you know, pretty much banded together and squashed that shit.
Yep.
Hardcore.
Yeah. And then there was that one. I think there was that one house that, like, really ground into the dust. Well, that was the aberrant mark house, right? That was like the 13th house, was it? I forget what the total tally was.
Oh, well, you know what? And there was a mark of death as well.
Yeah, the mark of death.
You know, which was, you know, something that appeared. So, like, they did a lot. Like, they put a lot of lore and story into the world of Eberron, and it just all intertwined really well. So it was almost like any kind of campaign you wanted to flesh out and play in, you know, Eberron had a place for it.
Right.
Absolutely.
Except for your swords and sandals.
Right. That's true. Yeah.
And, you know, that's the only one. I mean, even, like, you know, Dungeon Crawl, they totally had places for that as well.
Well, I mean, there's ruins to go through in different places, especially Seer.
Well, yeah.
Getting to Seer was problematic.
That was actually, that's almost like a Ravenloft feel.
Well, if you want to talk that, the nation of Karnath is also very Ravenlofty feeling, which we didn't really get into.
Yeah, well, you know, because it's all nations. There's, you know, we could do a video series on Eberron all by itself.
Right. Yeah.
You know, and there's, like we showed you, there's tons of books out there. If you wanted to take this game, this campaign setting, and start using it right now in 5th edition, I feel like it'd be pretty easy to do.
And you can probably get all these books for, like, you know, like pennies on the dollar because it's 3rd edition, kind of left behind.
Well, maybe you can get some of them cheaper, but, you know, I know a lot of them you can still buy on Amazon.
Yeah.
Yeah, the campaign setting's on there for like $20 or something. It's not too bad, and the reading's really good. You know, like I said, mechanically, there's a lot of stuff in there that you're not going to be able to use. But
you can use all the stories, and whatever's there that's not available in 5e, you can just, you know, convert it. You know, you take your feat sections, merge it together, you know, and build more out of it. Like there's a lot of feat trees.
Yeah.
Right. So, like, in 3rd edition, you know, you had the least, the lesser, and the greater marks, which they now have lumped in just the mark. And in, like, the Dragonmarks book, there's an expanded tattoo which allows you to essentially get more spells out of your Dragonmark. So if you lump them together, you know, you could get access to more spells based off of your level with just one single feat.
Well, or 2 single feet, because you probably have to be Dragonmark first.
Yes, you have to have the Dragonmark first, and then.
But, you know, so, and also, too, when I was running that game, I considered using some of the monsters in this book.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know,
the conversion was pretty simple for you?
Yeah, I mean, there's, like, you know, certain things like immunities. There aren't really many immunities in 5th edition. They would swap to resistances.
Right.
Unless it really felt like they should be immune. Then you could do that. You know, like, the ACs are higher in here. So you could either want to lower the AC or
just say, fuck the party. They're just going to have to deal with this.
Well, the other end of it was increase the CR.
Yeah.
Consider it a higher CR monster.
Yeah.
But then again, like, conversely, the other weird thing is with 5th edition, the hit points tend to be a lot higher.
Mm. But you're going to be hit more.
So you dial the AC down, you dial the HP up.
There you go.
Yeah, and it's pretty easy to adjust. So.
Change your immunities to resistances, and, you know, just look at the stats, compare it to a couple monsters of equivalent challenge, and, you know, move on.
Yeah, so if people don't feel like waiting for 5th edition to come out with Eberron stuff, I'll throw a link down in the description below to you can grab a book. I'll try and see if I can't find some decent prices on them or whatever.
Yeah, I mean, looking at your stack of Eberron stuff makes me jealous. I have Eberron envy because I only have the core campaign book. Yeah. I'm like, I want that.
Yeah, they're definitely good reading. You know, of course, you gotta have your Warforged book, and you need to have the Dragonmark book.
Got the full-on races,
the magic. The races book is actually the lamest, like, because all the other ones kind of look like they look the same the way they were put together, thematically.
If you actually look at the covers of all of them, like these fit the artwork of Eberron, whereas this one totally is just a 3rd edition cover.
Yeah, it feels like all the different Splat books, that 3rd edition, the Races of Eberron, it looks like all the Splat books that they come out with.
Yes.
Yeah, so I don't know if you'll be able to find all that stuff. Like I said, I know you can get the campaign setting. When I ran the other day, I just pulled this out, started refreshing my memory because I haven't touched it in years.
Right.
Wipe the cobwebs off.
Yeah, and and what I remember, it was just as I remember. The reading of it was actually really good.
So. Do we want to speculate on what they're actually gonna put in the new campaign setting?
They're gonna put everything that was in here.
Yeah. They'll just like translate.
They're gonna convert it.
I wonder. I am curious because when they've monkeyed around with rule sets before, usually they have a lame explanation for like how things change. Like they move the timeline up and some catastrophic event happened or whatever.
Yeah, but I feel like 5th edition you don't need to do that the way you did with 4th.
I hope they don't do that.
Because really a lot of it translates over really well.
Yeah, like Eberron needs to remain in the shadows of the last Great War that happened, what was it, like 50, 100 years ago, something like that in their timeline?
It's like 2 days ago.
No, I think there's been...
Less than 5 years.
Okay,
it's
really?
It's not long at all.
Yeah, but it needs to have that sort of lingering, like, people still very much remember it. Like, that's
that's
integral.
That's kind of the premise of the whole campaign set.
Yeah.
So you want that feel. But no, it's not that along at all. It's pretty much you're starting off with you could have been a vet of the war.
Oh, okay, yeah. Again, I needed to refresh my memory a little better on that Eberron thing. But all right, so we're gonna fly out. All right.